Hello, and this is Delia again. I'm reading the Vampire Diaries, The Awakening. We're going on to Chapter 11, Part 1. It's pretty daggone scary. I believe it's a Damon after her. That was in the auditorium at the gym at the school. That's who I think it is, but we'll see. Elena stumbled down the dim corridor, trying to visualize what was around her. Then the world suddenly flickered to brightness, and she found herself surrounded by familiar rows of lockers. Her relief was so great that she almost cried out. She never have thought she would be so glad just to see. She stood for a minute looking around gratefully. Elena, what are you doing out here? It was Meredith and Bonnie, hurrying down the hall toward her. Where have you been? She said furiously. Meredith grimaced. We couldn't find Shelby, and when we finally did find him, he was asleep. I'm serious, she added at Elena's incredulous look. Asleep. And then we couldn't get him to wake up. It wasn't until the lights went back on that he opened his eyes. Then we started back to you. But what are you doing here? Elena hesitated. I got tired of waiting, she said as lightly as she could. I think we've done enough work for one day anyway. Now you tell us, said Bonnie. Meredith said nothing, but she gave Elena a keen, searching look. Elena had the uncomfortable feeling that those dark eyes saw beneath the surface. All that weekend and throughout the following week, Elena worked on plans for the haunted house. There was never enough time to be with Stefan, and that was frustrating, but even more frustrating was Stefan himself. She could sense his passion for her, but she could also sense that he was fighting it. Still refusing to be completely alone with her, and in many ways he was just as much a mystery to her as he had been when she first saw him. He never spoke about his family or his life before coming to Fell's Church, and if she asked any questions, he turned them aside. Once she had asked him if he missed Italy, if he was sorry he'd come here, and for an instant his eyes had lightened, the green sparkling like oak leaves reflected in a running stream. How could I be sorry when you are here, he said, and kissed her in a way that put all inquiries out of her mind in that moment. In that moment, Elena had known what it was like to be completely happy. She felt his joy too, and when he pulled back, she had seen that his face was alight, as if the sun shone through it. Oh, Elena, he'd whispered. The good times were like that, but he had kissed her less and less frequently of late, and she felt the distance between them widening. That Friday, she and Bonnie and Meredith decided to sleep over at Macaulay's. The sky was gray and threatening to drizzle as she and Meredith walked to Bonnie's house. It was unusually chilly for mid-October, and the trees lining the quiet street, had already felt the nip of cold winds. The maples were a blaze of scarlet, while the ginkgos were radiating yellow. Bonnie greeted them at the door with "Everybody's gone. We'll have the whole house to ourselves until tomorrow afternoon, when my family gets back from Leesburg." She beckoned them inside, grabbing for the overfed Pekingese that was trying to get out. "No, Yancy. Stay in, Yancy. Yancy. No, don't. No." But it was too late. Yancy had escaped and was dashing through the front yard up to the single birch tree, where he yapped cheerily up into the branches, rolls of fat on his back jiggling. "Oh, what's he after now?" said Bonnie, putting her hands over her ears. "Looks like a crow," said Meredith. Elena stiffened, and she took a few steps toward the tree, looking up into the golden leaves, and there it was, the same crow she had seen twice before. Perhaps 3 times before, she thought, remembering the dark shape winging up from the oak trees in the cemetery. Now I do believe it's Damon, because he is a crow. If you watch the first of the Vampire Diaries, he flies into the house. And I do believe it's him. As she looked at it, she felt her stomach clench in fear and her hands grow cold. It was staring at her again with its bright black eye and almost human stare. That eye, where had she seen an eye like that before? Suddenly all 3 girls jumped back as the crow gave a harsh croak and thrashed its wings, bursting out of the tree toward them. At the last moment it swooped down instead on the little dog, which was now barking hysterically. It came within inches of canine teeth, and then soared back up again, flying over the house to disappear into the black walnut trees beyond. The 3 girls stood frozen in astonishment. Then Bonnie and Meredith looked at each other, and the tension shattered in nervous laughter. For a moment I thought he was coming for us, said Bonnie, going over to the outraged Pekingese and dragging him, still barking, back into the house. So did I, said Elena quietly, and as she followed her friends inside, she did not join in the laughter. Once she and Meredith had put their things away, however, the evening fell into a familiar pattern. It was hard to keep hold of her uneasiness, sitting in Bonnie's cluttered living room beside a roaring fire with a cup of hot chocolate in her hand. Soon the 3 of them were discussing the final plans for the haunted house, and she relaxed. Okay, so this will be another part, and I'll continue soon. Long as my phone don't get hot